The position we've taken is teach the controversy. Teach all the information, not just selected information that promotes one viewpoint, which most of the times that's evolution. But let's teach all the information so that the school children can learn how to think for themselves and come to their own conclusions.
Now settle down, class. We have a very busy day ahead of us. First, we need to review last week's information about evolution. The state mandates now that we teach the controversy, so you'll need to make some adjustments on your study guides for the test this Thursday. Settle down and just turn to page 616 of your textbook. Here we see photographs of some of the transitional fossils along the human ancestral line called Ardipithecus and Australopithecus. This should all be reviewed, so I really want to focus on the newly acceptable answers. On this next slide, for example, is a test question you might come across based on those photos. Which of the following are transitional fossils in the human ancestry? A. Tyrannosaurus and Stegosaurus, B. Ardipithecus and Australopithecus, or C. Pakicetus and Dorudon. Now, obviously, the correct answer is B. But the new movement to teach the controversy has required me to also include another acceptable answer. So on the test, you'll also have D. No transitional fossils exist, la la la, I can't hear you. I'd also like to show you a couple of directions you might take for your short answer portion of your test. Here's one acceptable summation of the origin of different species on Earth. This is an exemplar from the student who scored the highest on the test last semester. As random genetic mutations occur within an organism's genetic code, mutations beneficial to survival are preserved through natural selection. Mutations that make hosts more desirable mates also tend to be preserved because it increases the rate of reproduction, which is called sexual selection. These beneficial mutations are passed on to the next generation. Over time, beneficial mutations accumulate and the result is an entirely different organism. Here's an alternative response that will now receive an equal amount of full credit on the test. God done it. If there are no further questions on the evolution test for this week, I'd like to move on to this week's unit about weather. Let's start with lightning, shall we? Lightning is produced in thunderstorms when liquid and ice particles above the freezing level collide and build up large electrical fields in the clouds. When the electric fields grow large enough, a giant spark occurs between them, or between them and the ground, like static electricity. The giant spark is what we recognize as a bolt of lightning, which can occur between clouds, between the cloud and air, or between the cloud and the ground. I'm also obligated to inform you of the alternative possibility that these bolts are actually being hurled down to earth from Mount Olympus by an enraged god, Zeus. You see, the ancient Greeks believed that Zeus, the god of all gods, was not only promiscuous and incestuous, but also rather temperamental, and that thunderstorms were the result of that rage. Of course, either explanation for lightning will be equally respected in this classroom. Now, I'm going to give you some time to read the textbook's interpretation of the water cycle starting on page 666, before we spend an equal amount of time discussing what role Poseidon potentially plays in that matter. And next week, we'll even talk about the controversial possibilities of how human reproduction works. Isn't science fun, kids? Sorry, Wendy, but this isn't the way education works. And if you're going to consider what the Bible says to be information worthy of teaching to our children, then you're going to have to do the same thing for every other religion considers information. And if you don't want the Torah, the Quran, and the Book of Mormon being taught to our children as factual information, then you're going to have to avoid using the Bible as something that should be taught to our children as factual information as well, and then letting them just decide for themselves. So if you don't want every other religion that's ever been around to be represented as factual information, then I recommend you applying whatever standard it is you hold those against to keep them from being taught in schools to your religion as well. And then maybe we'll have enough room to actually keep the curriculum focused on information that's based on empirical evidence. And that's the way that anyone who's a responsible adult taking the position to decide what children are going to learn behaves.